This is my formal lesson plan review. I figured I'd go ahead and try it via video. This lesson was conducted on August 28th, 2023, in Miss Barden's class at Kyrene Middle School. It was a lesson on element chemistry. Students would basically do flame test and record their findings in uh, the lab sheet, data sheet, and record formative questions or summative questions and follow up with a CER statement. Uh, the practices that were used in this test were developing and using models. They would demonstrate that atoms and molecules could be combined and rearranged in chemicals, reactions to form new compounds with the total number of type of atoms observed. They would analyze and interpret data. They would record and analyze the phenomena, the various colors that came off from the element compounds. They would engage in argument from evidence. Students would argue or make a claim, evidence, and reasoning statement at the very end, as stated previously. The core ideas, knowing and using science, were in physical science. Number one, all matter in the universe is made up of small particles. Number four, the total amount of energy in a closed system is always the same. But can be transferred from one energy store to another during an event. And then using science, the number one practice, scientists explain phenomena using evidence obtained in the observation and or science investigations. Evidence may lead to developing models and other theories and make sense of phenomena. As new evidence is discovered, models and theories can be revised. The cross-cutting concepts used were patterns. Students observed and recorded the element colors when heated. Cause and effect, students note the changes when thermal heat is applied to the compound element, and structure and function. Students relate the arrangement of electrons, of elements, and its reactivity. So during quickly, I will go over this. I've already demonstrated this in the lesson components, but I'll review them very quickly. It began with an objective that they would write in their science notebook. Today, I will make observations that identify chemical elements so that I can cite evidence and support observation. The questions, students would write down a formative question, basically to spark their questioning and inquiry. How can you make observations of a flame test to identify chemical elements? Um, they had two articles that they reviewed quickly the previous day in regard to preparation for this that we included in the that I included. Was basically the students were provided with an article about fireworks, learn about fireworks, exclamation marks, and what's in fireworks and what produces the colorful explosions. Um, and then they were also presented a video while discussing it was in the background basically while discussing in preparation for the lab and safety procedures that would be distant. It basically showed a fireworks display. And I also made the comment that these are fireworks. This is their job. This is what they do. The materials were used was a lighter, a Bunsen burner, wood splints, tap water. We didn't use tap water. We used distilled water, plastic containers, and then the compound elements of lithium chloride, sodium chloride, copper chloride, and strontium chloride. And they had their glass beakers to extinguish the splints that were soaked in the thing. I had previously soaked the splints in the during each compound. The students would come up and one person from each lab table would come up and grab a splint. More on that a little bit later. How students investigate topics. Basically, they would record and demonstrate their uh, findings with each element, and record the color that was demonstrated in their lab table that was divided by the element, and then another cell for them to record the color. And the standards used in this was 8.P1U1.1 and 8P1U1.2. Again, this is in my component sheet for a detailed explanation on those concepts. Um, anyway, they recorded their findings in the flame tests, and students also identified which element compound is responsible for the colors exhibited in the experiment. And this is where they had misconception, and I did need to go through with them and guide them a little bit in their answering. Many of them had a misconception that the chloride was responsible for the color, and I had to walk them through their thinking process. And once I did that, many of them were able to realize that that was the common element, so therefore it could not have been responsible for the color demonstrated in the lab. Uh, and again, they basically ended up with a claim, evidence, and reasoning statement at the very end. So the strengths that were demonstrated, I believe I was pretty good with demonstrating and presenting the lecture the lab presentation in a pretty concise manner. My expressions are pretty confident, I feel. As with any eighth graders, you are going to have some goof off element. But I think I was pretty well able to keep them on track and involved in the experiment. They were engaged. Anything that has to do with fire and um, and so uh, and observing the colors, especially the copper um, chloride mixture was in the strontium was very colorful, so they therefore really enjoyed seeing that. We got a lot of oohs and ahs from that, and they were actively engaged the entire time. I feel that was a great strength in the in the presentation. There were, however, a couple weak spots, as with one thing I need to build on this strength a lot, and that is checking for understanding going on. I tend as a new teacher to kind of want to stick with my pacing of, which is absolutely necessary in a class that has to wrap up basically in 45 minutes especially a lab, getting all those things completed, keeping on pace. I need to slow it down and pause to make sure that my students are understanding and getting a nonverbal cue that they are, and figuring out a way that I can maybe get with students independently that need that, rather than halting the entire class, figuring out a way that I can get with that particular or those particular students while the other students are engaged with the activity that's going on. There was some behavior issues. Uh, Again, with eighth grade, you're going to have a handful of kids that are going to get carried away with the fire. I had many of them burning splints repeatedly in the fire, creating smoke in the room, and I had to correct them and have them put the splints out in the beaker full of water, so that it would not smell up the entire room. Um, I think that's pretty much sums up the uh, the strengths and weaknesses and a basic overhaul of the practices in the lesson. Um, Again, the details were covered in my components and my introduction. Um, anyway, I thank you, and this has been a real informative process, and I hope to just build on my confidence and my presentation skills, especially with students and particularly middle school students. Again, thank you, and that's it.